and Rolling Out City Manager Eddie Precise, and Fred Hampton Jr. Hello, everybody. How are you?
Awesome, awesome. Keep staying strong on this scene. How y'all doing?
Well, it seems like there's a plan here, and I thought based on the lack of history coming to the mainstream media that we could bring some truth to this particular media. Dr. Stevens is an epidemiologist because I think this plays a role. And we also understand that there are agents that are inside our uprising now. So it is obvious that this has happened before. Obviously, with much respect to your father and the movement that he was moving on, we've seen this. Can you roll this video, producer, for us all?
Ex-wife who identified him. In the video, Peterson starts smashing windows and kickstarts the riot in South Minneapolis. This is a very common tactic. As you can see, he has the umbrella to prevent aerial ID. After being confronted by people, he flees the scene. Watch till the end.
I just came with a hammer and smashed the windows.
I'm gonna fight you right now. You wanna go? What's up? Somebody hold my blunt.
Hey!
Somebody hold my blunt. I'm gonna keep it up. Hey!
The person that I'm about to show you.
So for all of us that are watching this and we think about it, we're not certain that that's the young man, the white guy they identified, but the reality is the provocateurs that are in this movement have incited a level of rage. This seems planned, and they seem to be executing the plan. Does that appear to be the case? And how do you anticipate this affecting the movement, Fred?
Well, first and foremost, let me say I didn't know this is how we was going to premise the discussion, but I appreciate that we are premising the discussion with this. The reality is anything in our community, even aside from the movement per se, we must always take into account agent provocateurs, counterinsurgency, and on so many instances, we try to minimize and say, well, people are paranoid talking about that. We look at dynamics such as the infamous COINTEL program or agent provocateurs in some sort of abstract James Bond 007, Russia, so on and so forth. But the reality is that there's a long lineage of counterinsurgency. I mean, as far as back when we were kidnapped from Africa through our liberation movements, the uprisings on the plantations with Reverend Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, so on and so forth. But to put this in context, as you did with just the opening the show, opening the interview, the infamous COINTEL program in the 1960s. So we especially to this point that the uprisings that are happening. I mean, continuously as we speak. I mean, throughout on an international level, we definitely have to, come in through the door, acknowledging, such terms as agent provocateurs, counterinsurgency, so on and so forth. So I'm extremely appreciative that we came through the door, acknowledging that we premise it with that, because that's a factor that has been and is been something that we have to always be taking into account in regards to our movements in particular.
Dr. Stevens, I'm very concerned that the pandemic is not something on the forefront of this movement when people are moving around with and without masks. And they could consciously know that they're spreaders, but they could be attending rallies and not in our community. How would this affect our community as it relates to the coronavirus being spread by individuals who are not in the Black community, but spreading it knowingly during a protest?
It's nothing new, and it's happened before. So you have people who are knowingly sick, and just like an agent provocateur, you have people who knowingly may be positive that want to spread the disease as well. So when you have a group of protesters and they're not social distancing and they're definitely not wearing masks and they're yelling and they're screaming, which basically propels the virus even further into the atmosphere in which they're in, what you're gonna have is a greater risk for everyone that's in the area where they're walking through or just hanging around. And so what happens is once they're infected, they take it back to their homes, whether they've traveled from a neighboring state or a state across the nation. That's basically what is going to happen. And so we are even now starting to see an increase in the number of confirmed cases in a lot of the states that actually have been protesting since Friday.
You know, Eddie, what is the state of Chicago? It seemed as though the main city is blocked off, yet the South Side is suffering right now.
You know what's interesting is I just came. I'm on the south side of Chicago in the Roseland community, and I just came from doing kind of a walkthrough to see the aftermath of all this looting that's happened. You know, after the murder of George Floyd. It's interesting because last night our downtown Chicago was lit up. All the looting and everything was going on there. And from what I saw, they tried to put everybody into one section of the city. They didn't work fast enough. A lot of damages happened. But what's interesting is that when we got up this morning is when it was determined that the National Guard will be coming to the city. But now there's no access to the downtown area. So what that makes me wonder is, where's the National Guard going? And the only thing that I can think of is the south side of Chicago.
So when we think of the agent provocateur, Brother Hampton, what should we know? Because all of them are not white.
No, good point. Excellent point. Well, definitely, I'm saying this not as objective as I can. You know, the case of the infamous William O'Neill, who supplied the floor plan for the assassination of my father, Chairman Fred Hampton, and the defense guy, Mark Clark. And the distinguishment should be made, like in regards to the agent provocateur, as opposed to the informant or snitch. You know, not taking away the damage that either these other entities do, but the snitch or the informant that technically goes back and reports information. The agent provocateur, there's a job to incite, to engage others, to engage in activities, and this is in many cases these be the most reactionary, in some cases the most bravado. Many people might think, well, they're fearless, so on and so forth, and this may in many cases they situations with individuals with mental illness issues, those lacking attention, you name it. The state has a psychological profile on grabbing individuals. And this is something has been utilized internationally with disrupting movements, creating contending organizations, the grab individuals. And again, they have psychological profile, and their job is to actually to go in to be proactive with creating disturbances, and also to engage others to follow their lead.
So we see this in a germ warfare scenario. How could this play out? Dr. Stevens?
They could actually find people who are positive to plant in these protests. Basically, and that's like, I've worked with biological terrorism before agents, and we have to learn just how that person works and how they think. And normally you think that will be someone from foreign soil, but in this case, it's not. Money talks. You can pay people to do anything. If they put out a message saying, hey, we're looking for, and it may seem innocent, say, hey, we're looking for people who've tested positive for COVID-19. And those people may answer an ad and may show up and it's like, hey, we're going to give you X number of dollars to go here. And what are those people going to do? We're already facing economic hardships. They're going to go. And they tell them, don't wear masks. These people aren't going to ask questions. They're going to take the money. They're going to go to these protest areas and they're going to actively spread disease.
I think the unconsciousness about the community is what really worries me the most, that we're not necessarily putting our best defenses forward, even in the looting, because the looting appears to be pushing our community into our community where they'll loot and ramshackle communities that will not recover. Could this be a possible plan, Brother Hampton? Because it just appears that they're pushing, particularly even in Chicago, they can't get downtown, so their own only place to actually disrupt now is the South Side, which is underdeveloped.
Yes, it definitely. We definitely assess it as a plan. In fact, we position that the climate of the coronavirus is capitalism on steroids. In other words, prior to the climate of the coronavirus, the different dynamics about the continuous murders, the murder rate, which led to the infamous reference in Chicago now is to be Chirac, the dropping up of automatic weapons into the hands of children, the food deserts, all these different dynamics strategically. This is response to Chicago, Cook County at one time per capita being the largest populace of Black people in the country. The infamous Cook County Jail being the largest county jail in the country. And I don't think it's a coincidence that shortly, initially, even with the information we received about the coronavirus, that it was in fact, they went as far as to say it was not targeted. Black people were not to be impacted by the coronavirus. Then suddenly, like many other dynamics, the AIDS virus and other different forms of chemical, what we refer to as chemical biological warfare, or we said that the Black populace, in particular, Cook County Jail was referenced as the hot spot for the entire country, and it's not a coincidence that all the different dynamics, again, the coronavirus, the different laws, so on and so forth, and where the National Guard would it be penetrating at, where the situation uprisings are reported at, all these different dynamics and working in concert, and some have nefarious intent and some have naivety. The system, in many cases, works with a need to know basis. They don't tell all the different players of the pawns. You know what I'm saying? As Sister Doctor, she just pointed out, so they may just grab individuals and exploit their need for resources, for economics, what have you. But the string pullers, there definitely is a plan.
So when you think about this during a pandemic and unemployment, it seems that we're prone to have people that are desperate that may not have an understanding that these individuals don't have any appreciation for the fact that this is happening. I think that we find that the police definitely have taken a new tone, given the fact that they now have a need to pull our community out of cars, tase them, and practice. It appears that this is a practice run, but they're practicing on our children. Why do you think this is happening? It appears to be a social narrative. Dr. Hampton?
I will humble myself to say that I don't know that I can't. Even our people in general, we can't even fathom the lengths that this system is saying what this goes to. But definitely murder, mayhem, and money is on his mind, and we take into account the history. I mean, everything ranging from even with the indigenous community, with the smallpox, with the blankets, to the infamous Tuskegee experiments, the Holmesburg prison in Pennsylvania. The long history of chemical biological warfare, even in Haiti, where the World Health Organization were doing tests with these pigs. And after they did the test with the pigs, they intentionally placed the pigs in the most disenfranchised, the most starving communities, and suddenly male children were born with breasts. And again, it's a multi-pronged attack: chemical, biological warfare, the military assault from the police, the starvation, and even the local police at a police station tell you if you deprive a person from food just for a short amount of time, how it impacts your ability to make logical decisions. So these are again the various tentacles laid out on long-range attack on black people in particular, and the colonized communities in general.
So, Dr. Stevens, when our community is suffering from anxiety, depression, fear, all these things that without thinking could be raising people's blood pressure. People could be operating and not taking their medicine for diabetes, and they're out in the street, they're fatigued. How will this make them susceptible for something like the coronavirus?
I mean, it definitely weakens your immune system, which would make you susceptible to any disease. And then let's not forget, that's a lot of the rage, a lot of the actions that we're seeing out there, it could very well be as a result of being infected with COVID-19, because that's a symptom. It affects the brain. And so studies have shown that the erratic behavior, there have been patients that exhibited mental disorders before actually being tested for the virus and then treated. And looking at of all the specialties, we know that hospitals are laying off, doctors' offices are laying off, and everything like that. But I was on a call a couple of days ago, and we were just looking at the numbers for like the specialties for medicine, and the only specialty that had not declined but actually had increased numbers of patients was the mental health, because just being sheltering in place, the quarantine has had a toll on people's mental health in general. So now you have an abundance of people who have never been on just anti-anxiety drugs or are being on meds, that they're being treated because they're prescribing meds for these behaviors. So if you just taking one, adjusting to medications, and then when given the opportunity to go out in the street to release your aggressions, they're going to do it. I mean, it's a natural inclination.
So for all of us who are just tuning in, this is Rolling Out News. We have Dr. Stevens, epidemiologist. We've got Fred Hampton Jr. We also have City Manager Eddie, my favorite, Lamar, brother out of Chicago, who's on the front line. But Fred, I have another question for you. Given the mental capacity of what it takes to create an agent provocateur, what have you learned about the individual who played that role in the life of your dad?
Well, let me say this. This ongoing investigation in regards to the assassination of my father, Chairman Fred Hampton, because the deal is, though William O'Neill was exposed, there's still a number of individuals who were participants who yet to be exposed. A number of different things. In fact, let me start off with this. I recall some years back when I was given a Trump location, I was framed myself, and I was in the infamous Cook County Jail. And there was an individual who was brought into the Cook County Jail who was said to be grew up or was related to William O'Neill. And there was a big uproar in the jail. They wanted to lock the jail down. They didn't know if he could be on the same deck, on the same unit, same tier where I was at. And I seek information, and I said, no, I would like to, do an inquiry in regards to this. You know what I'm saying? So the individual individual brought on the deck. And mind you, let's put this in context. This was pre-conversation. Now people talk about plastic surgery. This wasn't a common conversation back then. This is 1991. And the individual told me that he had grew up with William O'Neill, and he had said that he had never really grasped the importance of who Chairman Fred or the Black Panther Party was, the extent they had went to, until he had seen William O'Neal later on in years, and he did not recognize him. He was talking about about how they gave William O'Neal plastic surgery. He didn't recognize him. And in fact, I remember, I recall as a child, we went to the funeral of, they had changed his name, and my mother and other people say that he physically looked different. And that really put in context what extent the government would go to with Asian provocateurs. Also, I'd like to add, like, even it's not that we minimize and just think it's just about money, for the individuals. That was brought about, talked about $300 bonus that he received. And he would, but the deal is like that they also have a psychological profile on certain individuals. And they, in fact, the special agent in charge that he was assigned to, Marlon Johnson, Roy Mitchell, William O'Neal seen him as a father figure. So these are different dynamics. And also, just for the record, even Chairman Fred, he was never on Chairman Fred's security. In fact, Chairman Fred had pointed that out before. Chairman Fred never accepted him to be on his security. He was not even, in fact, put in the party or by Chairman Fred. So in fact, Chairman Fred had brought a lot of questions about him prior to that. But that's just a few of the dynamics in particular about William O'Neal and Asian provocateurs in general.
So when you think about this moment, we're unemployed, we got a pandemic. Could a race of people be more desperate and not even know it, given our psychological moment of being pent up inside, broke? So the desperation isn't quite being described in the narrative. And how does this play out with the spread of the pandemic, given that we're now incited and enraged, Dr. Stevens?
I mean, we all know that we were facing socioeconomic disparities and health inequities even before the pandemic, even before we actually started protesting. And so given the nature of the shelter in place, where people felt that their liberties had been stripped, and given the past history of the Black community and telling someone they can't go here and can't go there, and they want to be free. So it's I don't know. There's not a word to describe it, because it's pent up. It's like you've had years on top of years. I was looking at social media today, and they went back as far as Michael Vick, and they were saying that Michael Vick got more years, for dogfighting than these cops. So it's not just the new injustices that we're facing, it's years. And that's the thing, they're tired. And then to see on video, and then to watch live TV, and to see these injustices still being played out while protesting. I mean, it's gonna blow at the end of the day, because our brains, we just can't process that level of injustice that we're facing and that we're seeing right now.
Brother Hemp, when you saw our brother George Floyd being snuffed out, what went through your mind at that very moment?
Assata Shakur, who's former of the Black Panther Party, is political exile, she had said something to the effect that one of the things about being oppressed is that you must continuously struggle to be able to distinguish what's normal and what's abnormal. And my history is organized in our community, and the rampant police terrorism that goes on in our communities. We see it all the time, and sometimes it's a blessing and a burden to be able to assess in some of the different political dynamics. Like even just the way he was kneeling, the way he had his knee on his neck, the arrogance, the cockiness of it, and which I don't even give it that much to say that they even the individuals, they might not be conscious of it. It's a nonchalant, it's an arrogance, it's a comfortability on how they deal with our communities, and it struck a nerve. And I told another brother I was talking to, he said, He called me, he said, Chairman, I'm angry. I said, you should. I said, you should check your pulse if you're not, you know what I'm saying? Because one of the things about being oppressed is sometimes it dehumanizes us. In fact, you know, we start to accept as the norm, and we shouldn't accept as the norm. You know, as Marvin Gaye said, this ain't living. This ain't living.
So when you saw that emotionally, and then I think the fact that now, Eddie, 3 other individuals that participated in the crime are still at home having Sunday dinner. What does that give a sense to our young people of justice?
Well, I think that's mainly the driving force that are keeping people in the streets right now. I think that's what's prompted these riots, these demonstrations, or whatever you want to call it, because the whole world saw it. You know, once the police station came down in flames and they gave us Derek Chauvin, that wasn't enough. We need to arrest all of the police, every single one who's involved with these injustices that have to do with our people. If we continue to go down this road, there's going to be it's going to keep bubbling up. What we're seeing is a result of people who are just sick and tired. And so now we have to make sure, we have to hold this government to account and make sure that they give us what we want.
When you think about what we want as a community and as given our current status, what should we still understand about this pandemic? Because for me, I'm more concerned that the community could actually be destroying itself by not paying attention or letting their guard down in the name of protest. Is that a possibility, Dr. Stevens?
Absolutely. Because it's a distraction. The whole world, I mean, we've seen protests across the world, global protests, and everybody is still affected by COVID-19. It's still out here. It's not going anywhere. I even heard someone say, well, yeah, I believe that COVID-19 is real, but I don't believe it's a pandemic. So that's why they're out. They're not wearing masks. They're not doing anything. And then the other sentiment, like, well, we all have to die sometime. I mean, and that's what I'm getting. I'm talking to people and I'm saying, well, why are you out here? Why are you doing this? Why aren't you wearing a mask? And it's like an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. It's really bizarre to see grown people, grown men and women, not being able to articulate like the level of just rage that they feel. So if I can pick up a brick and throw it through a window, or throw a brick at a cop or someone that I feel has served some type of injustice, then that's what I'm going to do if I think I can get away with it. And essentially that's what's happening. They're not seeing the immediate arrest. So they think that, well, I can just go out here when no one else is wearing a mask. They're looking around. And with our young people, they're gauging it by what they see the older people doing. So the older people aren't out there with masks on. So they're like, well, hey, we're not going to wear a mask either. So who is leading this charge? Who is out here saying, okay, let's protest. Let's be smart about it. Let's strategize. So we've done this. We've marched. We have to go back now and re-strategize on how we're going to attack this tomorrow. And that's not happening. So they're just out and they're just hanging and they don't know what to do. So they're just infecting each other at this point.
You know, the rage seems to be something that we haven't been able to communicate, but the students who wanted to be a part of just an uprising, not seeing it as a movement, and as they organize, we've seen that these 2 students were in their cars. That's an issue. I want to make sure that we get to the video that has these students. maybe she doesn't have that video. I need to make sure she has the video that does that. But as an organizer, Brother Hampton, what should our young people understand about the fact that even though you're committing looting, that they will come after you after this moment? Because I think many of them don't understand they're on camera and they're being recorded.
Yeah, I like when I think we should come in acknowledging the desperation to the point that many people feel that there is no tomorrow. That and this breeds a sentiment of reactionaryism. But the struggle to put it in something like in political context, like even we have to be able to walk in true gum at the same time. We have to be multi faceted in our resistance. Like and relate this to different other communities, like in Vietnam, simultaneously when chemical biological warfare like Agent Orange was being spread on the Vietnamese people. There was still pillage of the communities, shooting of the Vietnamese soldiers, so on and so forth. So to put this in context, to say we understand, these different dynamics, and as we say, like even our present day organizers, we say like with our programs, our survival program, like the free food, we have a program, a CCC program. We still do it. But we say let's struggle scientifically, struggle strategically. So it does not put them in the absolute to say, okay, we acknowledge these different dynamics are going to occur, because even down on many of our people, they see the belly, the bottom, the belly of this system. On one hand, well, public officials are saying stay at home, and the numbers are decreasing one day, they increase one day. They're still being pulled over the police. Their cars are still being towed. They're still, the court system may be closed, but the different dynamics, there's still certain constants in the community. A bag of crack is still $10. So and that remains the same. That's a constant. So we have to, realistic, because theoretically, some people may say that this is, stay at home, but these realities, people, they still have, there's still adversarial relationships.
Let's watch this video.
Yes, sir.
Guys, come to our shot, come to our shot, come to our shot, come to our shot.
All right, what's going on? You see police officer there spraying, or it looks like something there is a confrontation.
Come to the shot, come to the shot.
Is that a
looks
taser?
Like a taser.
Yeah, it looks like a taser. We did not see what led up to this.
Yes.
But clearly this young man behind the wheel has
been tased. Just to give you a little background, we weren't here on the scene. We turn around and we see several officers go up to the car and start breaking the glass. We're not sure what led up to this. There was a woman in the front passenger seat and a gentleman in the driver's seat. They're pulling him out now. Now, of course, the crowd has caught on to what's happened. We have no idea what led to this. They flattened the tire, broke the glass to the car, and I hear what I believe to be a taser. Guys, come to our shot, come to our shot.
So obviously, two young people in their car. Since that video, obviously the mayor has fired the two individuals. But what playbook were they playing out of? What playbook, Fred Hampton Jr., was the police playing out of in this particular situation where two innocent students, one from Morehouse, one from Spelman, are tased, their windows are broken, they're trying to leave, and yet their experience with the police will have brutalized them for the rest of their lives?
They're playing from the playbook that's read in roll call. In 17th precinct in New York, read in roll call in the 9th district in Chicago, the Chicago Police Department. They're playing from the playbook that the foreign merchants receive in the communities. The slumlords how to deal with our community. They're playing from the playbook that Black people are to be treated like the Rodney Dangerfields of all races. No respect. Though when it's politically correct at certain times to say, wait a minute, this is an issue, but this is the modus operandi to come through the community, and it trickles down to the mindset of a young white woman in Central Park in New York. To say, if I say call those trigger words, an African American man is threatening my dog. They know that again, it's a constant from that of chattel slavery. Our lives are less valuable than that of property, animals, you name it.
Dr. Stevens, when you see this, and you were a young Black college student at one time.
Yes, I was.
And now they wonder why these kids who possibly could be spreaders, not these two, but those on the streets, it just seems like it gives them a level of what to move forward during a pandemic.
Well, I mean, when I first saw that video, and I'm not gonna lie, it sparked rage in me, because I'm like, how and why? And then to see the onlookers. So what that tells them is that it doesn't matter what we do. We can be doing the right thing or the wrong thing. The police doesn't care. So why should we care? So we're not gonna care about COVID. We're not gonna care about getting arrested, because no one cares about us. So it's a sense of hopelessness at this point. So they're not thinking about a mask. Half of them can't even afford masks or anything like that. And so once again, we're like trying to figure out, how do we get masks down there? You pass it out and then they don't see anybody else. So in the midst of all this protesting, you still have these young college students and just young adults who want to be a part of something, they want to assimilate to something, and they want to belong. And so if the majority of the people around them aren't wearing masks, I can pass out 1,000 masks. But if the majority of the people don't look like them, then they're not going to wear them.
I think that speaks to the importance of what Rolling Out is doing and these type of shows, because we need to keep the awareness high, because for some reason everybody think it's sweet. It's not sweet right now.
Yeah.
This is still happening.
I'm really even concerned with the individuals that don't understand they're using face recognition software. I'm really concerned with the brothers that might just be released on probation, or just riding in a car, giving somebody a ride down, and all of a sudden now his probation, his entire program, the level of consciousness, it could just be affecting them in the same rage. So is that something, Terry Shropshire, that you imagine the community coming to grips with right now? Because it doesn't seem obvious to our brothers and sisters that these are just traps set with little accoutrements. Like, you cannot be getting that much out of a Foot Locker or an AutoZone to bring you that much joy, but the desperation. How do you see this, Brother Shropshire?
Well, I think it goes back to piggyback on what Dr. Stevens said, that because their lives are not valued and they don't see themselves as being a part of the community, they don't take value in other people's property. So, goes back to the old African proverb: if the man burnt down what he didn't feel like he was a part of, and that's what we're feeling right now. We feel alienated, we feel criminalized, demonized, and marginalized, and so therefore, because of that, they're striking out at things deliberately, of things that other people value, and then because they're not valued themselves. So those people last night, you're right, they're going to be traumatized for the rest of their lives. They're never going to forget that experience, because it was so over the top, and that's the kind of thing that we're fighting against. So we have to embrace them ourselves and give them a sense of belonging and a sense of empowerment and self-love, because society, obviously, since we got here off the shores in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619, has not shown us that they value us except what we could do for them. And that's to this day. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if Michael Jordan got out of line, they would knock him over the head. You know what I'm saying? And so basically, it's what we could do for them and how we can entertain them, but not what we could build and contribute to the country with the rest of the country.
Got one more video that I want to share before we close out.
Greetings, citizens of the United States. This is a message from Anonymous to the Minneapolis Police Department. Police brutality and murder is a widespread problem in the United States, which has undoubtedly infected nearly every jurisdiction in the country, but the Minneapolis Police Department is among the worst, and has a horrific track record of violence and corruption. This week's brutal killing of George Floyd, which has sparked protests and national outrage, is merely the tip of the iceberg, in a long list of high-profile cases of wrongful death at the hands of officers in your state. In fact, in the past 2 decades, 193 people have been killed by police in Minnesota.
Thank you. So the plot thickens. Anonymous comes out and talks about it. We've got 6 minutes. Brother Fred, what do we understand about the role that the police play in inciting our community to commit crime and to actually get enraged over something that they can't control?
When you use terms like the machine or the system, I think it's imperative that we, again, put in context the role. The police is the tentacles of the system, of the businessmen, the institutions in our community, the policies, the judge. This is the machinery of it, and also to put in context the premise, the birth, the inception of the police department. They were initially they catch runaway slaves and the slave patrols. So, but they were not just operating as an independent entity. They were connected to the plantation owners, and it's not just as simple as a bad person, how they feel about us. Their economy depends on it. If you believe the police want to stop crime, you believe Don King wants to stop boxing. It's an economy. It needs crime to thrive or to survive.
Dr. Stevens.
Okay.
Same question.
Well, I mean, it is systematic poverty. It's I was having a conversation saying that this is like healthcare slavery. Black people, as far as like our health goes, we're basically slaves to medicine. They're not trying to get us well, and that's no secret. And then when you are in a situation where how can I put this? So we're at the bottom. We're going to be the most affected by disease. We're the ones that are being killed. So why try to really stop it or put an end to a protest? Arrest 3 people and all of this will end. But why, when you can kill and even possibly incarcerate more people and put them in private prisons, not only that, they're spreading disease, so we're gonna have an uptick in deaths anyway. So it's like they're allowing us to kill ourselves and incarcerate ourselves. So it's like a twofold message. And all of this police brutality unnecessarily is to send a message. They're trying to invoke fear at the end of the day to these young Black people, students, anybody that's watching. This is what we can do, even if you're not doing anything, fear us. And that's what's happening. So the pushback is what's killing us, whether it's trying to stay home and not, if we stay home and not do anything, then we're not doing enough. If we go out to protest, then we're basically putting ourselves at risk either with COVID-19 or being killed or hurt or arrested.
Terry, you got a minute?
Yeah, real quickly. I just think that if they're not going to treat you right, they're going to teach you right either. And so we're basically, just as traditionally, we are basically trained to service this country in a way that empowers the rest of the country. So we built this nation, made them what they are, fought in all their wars, propped them up, exalted them above the world, and we're not being rewarded because that's not what they had in plan. We were here to be the interminable burden bearers of Caucasian aristocracy, and that has not changed since the time we got ashore. And so basically, they want to, as Brother Hampton was talking about with the judicial system, and Dr. Stevens was talking about with medicine, and the educational system is the same way. It's part of this machine to keep us as the burden bearers of Caucasian aristocracy, and that has to be broken.
So when you think of the agent provocateur in this case, though, he's playing and she's playing a role, because what we also don't want anybody to think that it's just white men. There were, in this case, they play a role too. How do you see that, Brother Hampton?
Definitely, we have to be politically equipped to, recognize the Sambos, Uncle Sam and the Sambos, the Gringos and the Negroes. We just coming in with a simple race nationalist assessment is like bringing a knife to a gunfight. This is U.S. imperialism is extremely Machiavellian. I chair an organization right now, the Black Panther Party Cubs. They have infiltrated us. They have sent agent provocateurs. They cross gender lines. I mean, age, generational lines. They have, you name it. So the agent provocateur, we have to be definitely equipped. They're not.
I was thinking of the young lady Amy. She clearly played a role and went into character in Central Park. And clearly, the brother might have stayed, but she seemed to have picked up that training from someplace. Where do you think she was trained to get and go into character like that? She literally went into character. Where did she get that training from?
It's generational.
Yeah, it's all of America's institution.
It's a reflex. It's a reflex now.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you go against something that they don't like, I've been in meetings, and if you know someone they didn't do something and I call them out, then the tears flow.
Woo.
And I'm unbothered because I'm used to it now. But it's passed through generations. That's how Emmett Till. I could go. I'm not gonna. Okay. Yeah.
But we're talking in Chicago, and we're thinking about Emmett Till, and I think that for those who are protesting, they have even forgotten about Emmett Till. I think when we talk about our rage, we may not be taking them far enough back, because, and then they say it was just the men, and they forget Sandra Bland, they forget the sister in what is it, Louisville. So, I mean, it's a real thing. But Terry, how did she get into that voice? Because that voice was a real voice. I mean, she changed. You know, you were like acting classes 101.
Basically, it's many of them look at us as being subservient to them, and that we have a role in the society, and that is to entertain them and to provide them with relief, whatever that may be, and also to help to prop them up and to enrich in their lives and to better their lives. We're here to be the foundation from which they build their palaces, but we're not supposed to take part in that. We were not meant to be a part of that in some people's eyes. And so that woman was trying to check him and to put him back in his place. Boy, you better slow down and fall back, or else I'm going to get my agents to put you back in the place from which you were never supposed to come out of. And that it goes back to when people were talking about thinking about going back into Jim Crowism and legal segregation, where you're supposed to cross the street if a white woman was there. If you're supposed to keep your head down, you're supposed to use the right bathroom. That's what that woman was trying to institute and get back in. That's what Barbecue Becky was doing back in Oakland. That's what the woman who told on the little baby who was selling water in New York. That, you know, they're all trying to say you got a place, and it's not where you are. You need to get back in your place, boy, or else I will put you there, or I will get my agents to put you there. That's what she was doing.
So we see mass protest, and we understand that our community in siege. And I want to close out because I know it's late for everyone. We're going to start with you, Dr. Stevens. What should our community's awareness be in the mindset and in the wave of this pandemic and racial pandemic kind of colliding at the same time?
it's all about strategy. You can be smart, you can organize, you can social distance and still protest if you take the time and put your rage aside long enough to think about what's really happening. Everybody's so angry that they're not thinking straight. You can march 6 feet apart. I've seen it in some of the other cities with some of the more peaceful protests. They had masks on, they were 6 feet apart. But when you have that one person, that incendiary agent that jumps in and they're just high and just hopped up on like all of this energy and adrenaline, and they come running through and they're just like wide open, and then everybody follows suit. So you have to stick to a plan. You have to execute the plan. And then if you realize that it's not working, then you step back and you reassess. Because that's the only way you're going to be successful in this and live to fight another day. And that's
Fred Hampton, what should our young people, Fred Hampton Jr., what should our young people understand about the agent provocateur and the offers and the incentives they could get right now to participate by strangers or friends who see their desperation? What would you tell them to think about those who are making offers for them to participate, who haven't been in the movement before, and who are offering them money to come down? They might be sick, they might not be, but they want them to participate with them to get them caught up. What would you say to them?
I would draw a correlation to their everyday lives. I put my ear to the ground and study the different genres and entities that they're involved in, and let them know that the agent provocateur is not limited to just a movement or just a certain genre. That so even right now, it's in the hip hop community. They're blatantly raising up a blatant agent provocateur. This individual Tashaki 6ix9ine, who many people refer to as a snitch, but this individual, is an agent provocateur. We can't even count the amount of corpses that he alone is responsible for. People, mass people being locked up. So once we tap into them, let them know that, because many times our people are told that we're not worthy of being targeted by chemical biological warfare. We're not worthy of being targeted by agent provocateurs. And just acknowledging that, then we say, how the old saying goes, knowing is half the battle. Just acknowledging, no, you are there's a system that depends on you in your street trade, your hip hop community, the movements, all that. Our people have been targeted historically on a plantation, and this is a reality. And again, everything is political, including chemical biological warfare, including movements, including hip hop, including the streets.
Eddie?
I would say right now, our mental health as a people is very paramount. We need to acknowledge that this mental state that we're in right now is something that's been drilled into us, and we need to shake it off. We need to keep our eyes open and be vigilant in our movement, because there's a lot more coming down the pike.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Rolling Out News tonight, those online, but I want to thank my guests. It's Sunday, but this movement has not stopped. Our children are in harm's way.
Yes.
Our young people are not necessarily being as smart as they could be, and they're being surrounded by strangers. And my biggest concern is them being surrounded by strangers who have never policed them before, surrounded by strangers they've never known before, and surrounded by strangers that their parents haven't warned them about before.
Yes.
So to all those out there, please allow and make sure you keep a message of awareness and be clear that what you see might not be what it is. Thank you so much, and good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.